Hey everyone, my name is David Rao and I'm the music teacher who blogs at makemomentsmatter.org. You can also find my ideas on Facebook, on Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, Pinterest, and a couple other places when you search for my name, David Rao, or Make Moments Matter. Tonight I'm going to be sharing another Use It or Lose It video about something that you should use in your classroom and then something you should take out of your classroom. Tonight I'm talking about Asian representation in books that we often use in our classroom and some thoughts about that. That's coming up in just a second. If you hear me talk about a link or a blog or something that you're interested in, I have all of those things linked on one page on my blog. If you go to makemomentsmatter.org and click the video tab, there's a recap page for this school year, or just wherever you're watching, listening to this, there should be a direct link at the bottom of the caption for this video. Also, if you are interested, over this long weekend, I was looking for fun things for my classroom, things that I'm interested in, speaking of the links page, and I got to going on what would be so much fun, and I fell down a rabbit hole, and so I made an Amazon idea list, which is like a list that you can just like peruse and whatever, and it has just a ton of like silly random fun things for your classroom, anywhere from like a little like lamp that looks like the globe, or it looks like the moon, you tap it in and changes colors, to like fidget toys, to like decoration and like desk stuff. I mean, like I said, I was sitting watching TV and went down a rabbit hole. Anyway, so speaking of the links page, if you want, I linked that on the links page. You can go and just see all of the random stuff that I don't know, I may or may not buy for my classroom at school, but would be super fun. Go check that out if you want. Okay, and one more thing. Workshops that are coming up, if you're interested in seeing me in person or coming and learning together, would be so much fun. Not that online video stuff is not fun, but it'd be fun to meet in person. So I'm going to be in Anchorage, Alaska this in a week, basically the 14th through the 16th, if you're part of the Alaska ORF chapter. I'm so excited to be there. If you're not a part of the Alaska ORF chapter and you want to come join us, please do. I'll be at the Northwest Ohio ORF chapter on October 14th, and then the Michigan Music Educators Fall Conference October 21st. So write it down on your calendar. I hope to see many of you guys there. Okay, so last week I talked about a book that you should use in your classroom and a book that you should take out of your classroom. And today I have the same sort of format. I'm going to talk about a book but I'm going to flip it. I'm going to talk about a book that you should take out of your classroom, and then a book that is great for your classroom you should use instead, or use along with lots of other great resources. So also, I'm continually trying to expand and learn more and add more books to my classroom library. So I'm talking tonight about Asian representation in children's books, just in 2 books. But there are so many books out there. I have a whole list on the links page of books that are great with Asian representation, either as protagonists or the story, or a big part of the story, or maybe it is an actual folktale, or I'm just trying to do my best to like collect as many stories as I can. It's not a super huge list right now, because while there are many, many books out there with Asian protagonists or Asian storylines, not all of them are as simple, like just easy to pick up and use in the music classroom. So I tried to pull out stories that either had a musical thread, or dance or musical instruments were related, or seemed more easy to include in your classroom, because there are many, many, many books that are like cool, but wouldn't be as easy to just pick up and use in your classroom if you're interested. But if you have a book that is not on that list, please send it to me and I will add it to the list, so that anybody else who looks at that can see and learn with the both of us. Anyway, so there's a whole list of books that you could use in your classroom if you're interested. And there are many more out there. Send me your recommendations. Okay, so the book I'm going to start with is the book that you should take out of your classroom or think about, and I'll explain why. But it's a book that you may be familiar with, and it's called Tikki Tikki Tembo. It's written by Arlene Mosel and illustrated by Blair Lent. Let me just read just a part of it, because I think a lot of folks maybe know it from use in their classroom, use when we were growing up, or use because it's not a new book, it's an old book. But I'll just read just a part of it so you can remember with me. I don't know. Once upon a time, a long, long time ago, it was the custom of all the fathers and mothers in China to give their first and honored sons great long names, but second sons were given hardly any name at all. In a small mountain village there lived a mother who had 2 little sons. Her second son she called Chang, which meant little or nothing. But her first and honored son she called Tikki Tikki Tembo, no sa rembo, chari bari ruchi pip peri pembo, which meant the most wonderful thing in the whole wide world. Sorry, it's been a long time since I've read or used it, so that doesn't flow off the tongue as quickly. Every morning the mother went to wash in a little stream near her home. The 2 boys always went chattering along with her. On the bank was an old well. "Don't go near the well," warned the mother, "or you will surely fall in." Do they listen to that advice? No. The boys did not always mind their mother, and one day they were playing beside the well and on the well when Chang fell in. Tikki Tikki Tembo no Sarembo, Chari Bari Ruchi Pip Peri Pembo ran as fast as his little legs could carry him to his mother. "Most honorable mother, Chang has fallen into the well." "The water roars, little blossom, I cannot hear you," said the mother. Then Tikki Tikki Tembo no Sarembo, Chari Bari Ruchi Pip Peri Pembo raised his voice and cried, "Oh, most honorable one, Chang has fallen into the well." "That troublesome boy," answered the mother. "Run and get the old man with the ladder to fish him out." Okay, so this is the basic story. They go get the old man with the ladder. He helps get the kid out. Child saved, right? Okay, but then, they pump the water out of him, push the air into him, pump the water out of him, push the air, and Chang was as good as ever. Okay, hooray! Not the end of the story. Okay, so several months they didn't go near the well, but then they ran to the well to eat rice cakes, and they played on the well, and then Tikki Tikki Tembo with full name fell into the well, and Chang went down to try and tell the mother, and she can't really hear him because the water's so loud, and then he says Tikki Tikki Tembo's but not the whole name, and so she's saying say his whole name with reverence, and then but he's so out of breath because he's been running and stuff. Anyway, it's a long story. Anyway, so he keeps trying to tell his mom. She keeps saying no, you need to say his full name. I can't hear it. Blah blah blah. So anyway, they get the old man. They pull him out of the well. He was dreaming. Sorry, I forgot about that part. But so the old man doesn't go. So he just grabs the. Anyway, he gets him, grabs the thing. They go save the kid. Hooray. And the water's so long. And he was never quite the same. Whew. Wow. And from that day to this day, Chinese have always thought it wise to give all their children little short names instead of great long names. Because it took so long to get him out because his name was too long. Anyway. So, that story. It's an interesting story, and I first learned about it when I actually did not know and no one taught that as a teacher to me when I was a child in elementary school. I first learned about it from a music PD in the first district I worked in years and years and years ago. And I'm not sure I've ever used it. I know people who do though, and the thing is that the story is not necessarily accurate. It starts out by saying it's an old Chinese folktale. The research that's been done about it is that the closest they could find is maybe a Japanese folktale, but even then it doesn't really quite follow the story. They say, they called him Chang, which means little or nothing. That's apparently not true. Anyway, there are all these sorts of things that are problematic about the story itself. Is it true? Is it not? When you're calling it an actual folktale, it should be a folktale, right? So it's probably not a Chinese folktale. Maybe a Japanese folktale, maybe, but that's not what they say in the story. Also, there's a lot of this artwork that shows elements that are not Chinese. There's people who are smarter than I and know the culture better than I who have done research into that too, and they're there are really some more things that are Japanese references, Japanese sort of mentions, but it's not. So basically, it's not really what it says it is. which is sort of problematic. And I've read a couple articles about it. Saw some things on TikTok, which TikTok is like interesting, but you should go and do some research after you hear some things. What I found most interesting was this article on a blog called We Have Kids. And one of the things they were talking about was this story written by, I believe, a white woman published in 1958. 58, right? Not 68. I can't remember exactly. I think it's 58. 68, sorry. Decade off. But published in 1968, the thing that they said, and I'm going to quote here, the troubling thing about Mosley's story is that it was written in an era when Asians were almost universally distrusted. The communist Chinese were considered an enemy of the United States, and the U.S. was in the middle of the Vietnam War following the Korean conflict. 40 years ago, when the book was written 50 years ago, it was socially acceptable to make fun of Asians in movies and on TV. I believe the book was written at a time when Chinese culture seemed foreign and inaccessible. So basically, all this to say, it's not a real Chinese folktale. The story and art make us think that maybe it's Japanese, but even then, doesn't really fit exactly with the folktales that we know. So if you're gonna, and a couple blogs were like, if you're gonna use this, just say it's a story from long, long ago. Don't place it in China. Don't try and say like, this is a representation of Chinese culture, when it is very much not. But even then, for me, the thought that like, oh, it's like, maybe the author was like, it's sort of Asian, but I'm going to make it Chinese. There are just too many things for me that are problematic, that I just don't feel like I need to use it. There are probably other books that are better and represent the culture better. So please go and read more and learn more. And if you have more research about this book, I'd love to read even more about how it came to be and why it came to be. The publisher and the author the publishing company and the people that promote it seem to think like, oh no, it's a great book, but maybe not. Okay, a book to use instead is this book, which I think is a great book called Suki's Kimono. This is by Kieri Uegaki, which wrote another book that I really love. The other book that she wrote that I really love is called Hana Hashimoto's Sixth Violin. It's this cute little story about a girl who wants to play violin at the talent show at her school, and her grandpa plays violin really well, and she ends up not playing all that well. It's a great story. I've talked about it before, but definitely worth looking into. Anyway, let me read part of Suki's Kimono to you, and then I can talk about how you could use this one instead. On the first day of school, Suki wanted to wear her kimono. Her sisters did not approve. "You can't wear that," said Mari. "People will think you're weird." "You can't wear that," said Yumi. "Everyone will laugh and no one will play with you." "You need something new, Suki. You need something cool." But Suki shook her head. She didn't care for new. She didn't care for cool. She wanted to wear her favorite thing, and her favorite thing was her kimono. Suki's Oba-chan had given her the kimono. That means grandma. Had given her the kimono. The first time Suki wore it, her Oba-chan took her to a street festival where they slurped bowls of slippery, cold somen noodles and shared a cone of crunchy shaved ice topped with a sweet red bean sauce. Under strings of paper lanterns, Suki joined her Oba-chan in a circle dance. She followed her and copied her movements, trying to be as light and as graceful. She watched the other women and children who danced, especially those who were dressed in cotton kimonos like her. Later, Suki sat so close to the stage that when the taiko drummers performed, bom, 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 she felt like she'd swallowed a ball of thunder and her whole insides quaked and quivered. Before they left the festival, Suki and her Oba-chan stopped at a souvenir stand. There were many things to choose from, but her Oba-chan found the prettiest thing of all, a handkerchief of pale pink linen decorated with tiny maple leaves and cherry blossoms. When she gave it to Suki, she said, "This will help you remember our day." Now it was time for school. Mother checked Suki's obi one last time and took a picture of Mari, Yumi, and Suki together by the front steps. Then, as she watched, the three sisters made their way down the block to their school. Mari and Yumi stayed several paces ahead of Suki and pretended they didn't know her. But Suki didn't mind. She turned and waved to her mother before she clip-clopped along in her shiny red geita, feeling very pleased in her fan-patterned blue kimono. Once in a while, Suki would lift her arms and let the butterfly sleeves flutter in the breeze. It made her feel like she'd grown her own set of wings. When they reached the school, Mari and Yumi hurried across the yard to a group of their friends. Suki stopped and looked around. Some of the children turned and stared at her, and others giggled and pointed at her kimono. But Suki ignored them. She took a seat on a swing to wait for the bell. A girl dressed in overalls just like a pair Suki had at home sat on the swing beside her. "Hi, Suki," said the girl. "Hi, Penny," said Suki. "How come you're dressed so funny?" Penny asked. "Where'd you get those shoes?" Suki lifted her feet off the sand and wiggled her toes. "I'm not dressed funny," she said. "My grandma gave me these shoes." Suki started pumping her legs. After a moment, Penny did the same, and soon they were both swinging as fast and as high as they could. Swoosh, swoosh, up and up. When the bell rang, Suki and Penny jumped off their swings and ran to the gym for the first day assembly. Once they were finally taken to their new classroom, Suki chose a desk near the window. Penny chose a desk next to Suki. As they waited for everyone to find a seat, two boys in front of Suki turned and snickered behind their hands. One of the boys reached out and snatched at Suki's sleeve. "Look at this," he said. "She's a bat." Suki felt her cheeks burn, but she did not respond. Instead, she concentrated on sitting up and straight and tall, the way her Oba-chan always did. It was easy to do with an obi wrapped snug around her middle. Her obi was golden yellow, and in its folds Suki had tucked away her pale pink handkerchief. "Welcome to the first grade," said the teacher. "My name is Mrs. Paggio." She smiled. "Let's introduce ourselves and tell everyone what we did this summer." When it was her turn to speak, Suki stood up and told her teacher her name. "Hello, Suki," said Mrs. Paggio. "What did you do this summer?" "My grandma visited us," she said, straightening her sleeves. "She brought me my kimono and my gaita." Suki raised her foot to show her teacher the wooden clog. Somewhere in the classroom, someone laughed, but Suki took a deep breath and continued. "The best thing was that she took me to a festival, and there were dancing girls dressed like me, and they danced like this." She took a few steps and swayed her arms sideways. "Look, now she's dancing," someone said, but Suki didn't hear. She hummed the music she remembered hearing at the festival. She remembered how it felt to dance barefoot in the open air on fresh-cut grass that tickled her toes. She tried to picture the other dancers, how they moved forward in the circle with the rhythm of the music, how they stamped their feet, first right, then left, swung their arms first up, then down, how they stepped back, and then clapped. When Suki couldn't remember the next step, she made it up just to keep dancing. 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, stop. When she finished, the room seemed very quiet. Everyone was watching her. Suki sat down, wondering if she was in trouble. But Mrs. Paggio said, "That was wonderful, Suki," and she started to clap. Then, so did Penny, and after a moment, so did the entire class. After school, as the three sisters walked home together, Mari and Yumi grumbled about their first day. "No one even noticed my new sweater," said Mari. "No one even noticed my cool shoes," said Yumi, but Suki just smiled. As she clip-clopped along behind them, Suki pulled out the pale pink handkerchief from her obi and held it up over her head to catch the wind. And in her blue cotton kimono and in her shiny red gaita, Suki danced all the way home. Okay, so in comparison to Tikki Tikki Tembo, which is Asian adjacent, maybe, not real story, not real folktale, came out during a time when making fun of Asian people was not uncommon. Compared to that, this book is like a breath of fresh air, so different. So what I love about this book is it shows us the context of the girl and of her family. It lets us know why she has the kimono, what's the history. She's hearing from grandma. She's got these connections to family. She's been to this festival, and kids can connect to that. Like, I love that, like, before anything really happens, it gives you this context of her family and the connections that she made and all the things that she sees. I think that's so cool. And then she goes to school and she sits with her friend, and her friend's like, "Why are you wearing these weird clothes?" And she's like, "Oh, here's why," and blah, blah, blah. And her friend's like, "Oh, okay, great." And then she goes to her class and gets some of that pushback as well. And then again, demonstrates it and gives her, not that she's not a little nervous. I feel like she is nervous to share this with her classmates, but she gives her story and talks about all these great connections she had. And and then they like sort of understand a little bit. It doesn't go into depth about what happens with all the kids, but I feel like it's that great like opening door of like getting more information. They're starting to understand, get her story a little bit better. And I just love it. Like it shows you so many things that if your students are hearing it, they might be like, oh yeah, I've been to one of those festivals, or oh yeah, I do. My grandparents do tell me stuff or whatever, or, teach me things. And then that's all before they come into this classroom setting where then Suki is sort of like made fun of. And so the kids, I feel like, will resonate with Suki before anything else happens, and then they see the reactions of other kids. So I just love how this like gives them a real life story of like, what is it like being that kid, bringing in something new, or being a culture bearer, coming in and giving more context or giving new information. What is it like to be that person? Because not all of them have been in that situation. So I think this is just such a super cool book. Especially in contrast to Tikki Tikki Tembo, which is like pretending to be a real story from a culture. Like this is actually giving us like real fun, cool connections. And there are so many things you can do, I think, as a music teacher. You can connect to the festival, you can connect to the music, you can connect to the dancing, you can connect to these culture points. If you have a song or something that you want to bring in, whether it's related to this culture or not, if it is, great. But if you want to say, like, this is just her experience, and here, so it can give you context for a conversation about when I bring in any song from any culture, how are you going to react? If it doesn't fit with your understanding, is that good or bad? Or, how do you react to that? So I feel like this is a great beginning of the year book to read, whether or not you have a specific lesson, a specific song to connect to this. I feel like this sets the tone for any time you do bring in a song from a specific culture or place. And it helps kids sort of understand, well, if this doesn't connect exactly with my schema and my understanding, how am I going to react anyway? How am I going to be understanding, and how am I going to be a good listener and a good learner? Anyway, so I think this is a super cool book, a great one to use. But like I said, there are many, many, many books that you can use that have Asian representation that are great and wonderful and true to their culture and true to our conversations with kids. And I've linked some of those on the links page on the ideas list. If you have more books that you're like, hey, this is a really great book, you should include this on your list, please send me a message or an email. My email's makemomentsmatter@gmail.com, and I'll add that to the list. But I hope that gives you I hope that list gives you some ideas of like, hey, here are some really cool things that I could go and use in my classroom. And in my video last week, I talked about where you can find those books. And my process is always the same. If I find a new book, I try and get it from my library first, my public library. I try and, go through the collection, try and find a copy before I buy it, so I can see it, prep, and think like, how could I use this in my classroom or how not? And then I go look for it on those discount book websites. I mentioned all of those in last week's video. I have a whole blog post about how to find books and not break the bank doing that. But just like I said last week, I would check it out from the library and then buy it on a discount book website. And if you can't do that, check out the big book dealers like Barnes & Noble or Amazon, whoever, and check them out there. But like I said, go look for those books. The more you start looking, the more you're going to find, and the more great connections you're going to make with your students. And like I said, if you have a great book that you love, whether it's Asian representation or not, if you look through all my book lists and you don't see a favorite book there, please send me a message. I'd love to include it in my book list so that I know about it and other people know about it as well. Okay, I hope y'all had a great Labor Day, and I will see y'all next week. And I hope you have a great week teaching and spending time with your kids. Bye, everyone. Have a great night.